Everyone knows Vikings raided for silver and slaves, but that was only part of the story. Their real power came from something bigger. The goods they controlled, stretching from the Arctic Circle to the streets of Baghdad. You picture an axe, a longship, a smoking village. That's the image handed to you by movies and games. Real Viking society ran on something quieter and far more valuable: trade. Towns like Hedeby, Birka, and Kaupang weren't raiding camps. They were planned trading towns, with workshops, weighing scales, and merchants who never picked up a sword. Hedeby alone has produced over 300,000 fragments of worked antler, the leftovers of a comb-making industry that shipped its products across the Baltic. Kaupang's excavations turned up more than 100,000 artifacts, from Arabic coins to glass beads to half-finished jewelry. If raiding built the Viking reputation, trading built the Viking economy. Even the barter itself got written down. One runic inscription found at Hedeby records a trade between two named men. Odulfr gave Eirikur an otter skin and got a sword in return. That's not a legend. That's a receipt. So what were they actually moving? Start with furs: sable, marten, fox, squirrel. Northern pelts that European elites couldn't get anywhere else. But furs alone don't explain the fortunes some Norse families built. For that, you need something stranger: walrus ivory. Around the year 890, a Norwegian trader named Othere sailed south to the court of King Alfred of England. He told Alfred's scribes he'd traveled north to hunt walrus because their tusks carried especially fine ivory, and their hide made excellent ship rope. He brought some of those tusks as a gift for the king. That single account is one of the only first-hand descriptions we have of this trade, and it points to why Norse settlers pushed into Iceland, then Greenland. Archaeologist Thomas McGovern's research suggests Greenland wasn't settled mainly for farming, even though that's the version most people know from the sagas. Recent genetic tracing of surviving ivory artifacts backs this up, showing that by the 12th century, Greenland had become Europe's near-exclusive supplier. It was settled for ivory, fur, and hide exports the growing markets of Europe couldn't get anywhere else. Next question: what else did the ground itself provide? Whetstones. Not glamorous, but essential. Every sword, axe, and scythe needed sharpening, and Norwegian schist from quarries at Eidsborg and Mostadmarka was simply better at the job than most European stone. Archaeologists have traced whetstones from those two quarries as far as Poland, England, and the Netherlands. One study of a Viking-era harbor in Poland found that 90% of the whetstones recovered there came from those same two Norwegian quarries. Norwegian archaeologist Irene Baug, who has spent years reconstructing this trade, points out that moving whetstones at that scale required a genuine export port, the same infrastructure that could move other goods alongside them. Add soapstone cooking pots, quarried and carved in western Norway, heavy and unglamorous, but common in graves across Denmark. Add grinding stones cut from volcanic lava near Mayen in modern Germany, shipped down the Rhine to bakeries and farms across the North Sea world. Add iron, timber for shipbuilding, amber from the Baltic coast, and honey and wax pulled from northern forests. None of this looks exciting in a museum case. All of it kept Viking Age Europe running. Then there's the strangest export of all: birds. A study published in 2026 by historians Caitlin Ellis and Sam Ottawil-Soulsby traced a wave of white falcons that showed up as gifts to the caliphs of Baghdad in the late 800s. One gift alone, sent in the year 893, included 32 falcons, 11 of them white. Their conclusion: these were very likely Arctic gerfalcons, caught in Iceland or Scandinavia, and carried thousands of kilometers south along Viking and Rus trade routes, probably down the same river systems that carried furs and silver. As evidence, they point to falcon-shaped sword fittings that start turning up in Scandinavia and Eastern Europe around the same time, a sign the birds became part of elite warrior identity, not just cargo. That trade didn't last. It seems to have collapsed within a decade or two, possibly because the Icelandic gyrfalcon population simply couldn't sustain the demand. So that's what flowed out of the north. What flowed back in? Silk, glass, wine, spices, jewelry made in workshops the Norse never saw. At Kaupang, excavators found imported glass beads and pottery sitting right alongside local whetstones and metalworking tools, proof that this wasn't a one-way flow of raw materials heading south. Foreign luxury goods were coming back the other direction, into ordinary Norwegian trading towns, not just royal halls. In 2013, textile historian Marianne Vedelair completed a 4-year study of Viking-age silk finds, including the enormous haul from the Oseberg ship burial, 15 separate silk textiles, some cut into narrow strips and reused as trim. Her conclusion overturned the old assumption that most of that silk was looted from English or Irish churches. Instead, she argued the bulk of it was purchased, carried up river networks from Persia and the Byzantine Empire through trading posts controlled by Norse merchants known to history as the Rus. That eastern route is where the picture gets its clearest proof. In 921, an Arab diplomat named Ahmad ibn Fadlan traveled from Baghdad to the Volga River and personally met a camp of Rus traders. His account, still one of the richest outsider descriptions of Norse trading culture, describes men who'd carried goods hundreds of miles inland to sell, arriving with cargo, not just weapons. And the payment for all of it was silver. But here's the detonation. That silver wasn't simply stolen. Scandinavian museums today hold close to 500,000 Islamic dirhams, and some researchers estimate far more silver actually passed through Viking hands. Possibly close to 1 billion coins moving through Scandinavia and the wider Viking world between the years 800 and 950. The single largest hoard ever found, unearthed on the island of Gotland in 1999, held over 14,000 coins by itself. Most of that silver was earned, one transaction at a time. Furs, wax, honey, ivory, and falcons went south and east. Coins came back north. Raiding produced dramatic headlines. Trading produced the actual, sustained wealth. That wealth changed what Viking society valued. A longship wasn't only a raiding vessel, it was cargo capacity, and cargo capacity was status. A chieftain's power increasingly depended on controlling a market town, a river route, or a quarry, not just an army. Burka, at its peak, held something like 700 to 1,000 people living off exactly this kind of exchange. Craftsmen making combs, jewelry, and glass beads purely for export in a town that existed because of trade and for nothing else. Trade is what physically connected a farmer in Norway to a caliph in Baghdad and an emperor in Constantinople. Three worlds that otherwise had almost nothing in common. So the picture shifts. Don't abandon the raiders. They were real and brutal, and that part of the story isn't going anywhere. But sitting right next to them were merchants who spent years building trust along river routes, learning foreign languages and moving cargo that had nothing to do with plunder. Some of them were the same men, switching roles depending on the season and the opportunity in front of them. The Vikings didn't just take what the world had. For a few centuries, they were also the ones who delivered it, north, south, and everywhere their ships and their reputations could reach. If the version of the Viking Age you grew up with was built entirely on raids, what does it say that their longest-lasting influence on Europe came from what they carried, not what they took?